Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome once again to the live stream. Welcome to this week. We are here. We got some news. We got all kinds of stuff, and we'll of course have lots of fun as we talk. And of course, those of you who just tuned in, we did have our little graphic, that new thing we have at the beginning. Mostly, it's basically to kill about the first 30 seconds for those who are watching ads, so that way they don't get into that. And plus, it's a little fun, and you guys said you liked it, so we got it. We got it. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of you guys in here today. This has been a fantastic week, so we're going to talk a little bit about the week. It's been darn cold here this week too. So I'm actually hoping that spring does actually show up in the coming week. I have a feeling it might. Now, I want to talk a tiny bit about Blossom, as I tend to do at the beginning of the stream. So Blossom is that social media app for investors. It is, of course, well, everybody and their dog is pretty much there. If you're into investing, you got all of the big Canadian, basically YouTubers that are there. Everyone from Brandon Beavis, Canadian a T-shirt, well, Mountain Finance, we're over there too. If you want to check it out, there is a link below. So just go down there, click on that link, go on over, give me a follow when you get there. I'll follow you back because I definitely want to be able to watch you guys, what you guys are doing and interact. And that's kind of the fun thing there, is just to interact with all of that. All right. Oh, excuse me. Before we get into the news, we are looking to do a special live stream on April 10th, and that is going to be a crypto-themed live stream. So it's going to be this week, Crypto Night. I'm still looking to get some guests for that. I don't have anybody on yet, but it's actually hard to find Canadian crypto personality. So, hey, if you guys know someone, send them my way. I would certainly appreciate it. Yeah, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We had last week saw that big video, the RRSP meltdown. I was like, holy banana bread, that did really, really well. It actually did the best. It had the best start of a video ever on the channel. So it's still doing pretty darn good. So that was all you guys. You guys all demanded it. You guys were like, we want it. We want it. So I gave it to you. So hey guys, that one was a good idea. So we got a whole bunch of other things coming up as well. So let's jump into the chat really fast, because you guys have already exploded it, and we're not. You guys had it exploded before the stream even started. So we got Jonathan here saying I'm ready, and Jordan's in the house with a hello, Candace, and all the chat family. And good old Ian, he's on the other side of a mountain with basically no cell coverage. Hope I get enough signal to watch the stream. I hope so too. I hope so too. If you lose the signal, you can always watch on the replay. So that's not a bad thing. Bismarcky is in here with a good afternoon all. Hope it's been a good weekend. So hopefully everybody's had a pretty good weekend. Mary says, happy Sunday. We got Ian in here. Anyone got to guess why POW, so Power Corporation of Canada, dropped over 4% on Friday? My best guess is going to be their earnings. I did not look at their earnings yet. So I'm going to say that it was probably their earnings report. If they didn't meet expectations, I could certainly explain it. Now, if they did meet expectations, then we got a mystery. Then we got a mystery for sure. Lisa's in the house with a hello all. And we got Vic. Tell us about Telus dropping huge. Yeah, there's been some big drops on the telecoms, Telus and Bell. I haven't looked at Rogers, but I'm going to assume that they're following suit. So yeah, it's more of a sector thing, I think, at this point in time. But no, hold on tight. Hold on tight. They will rebound. Change Despair says, hi, folks. And there, Wayne is just confirming that BCE is absolutely collapsing. We've got Prairie saying good afternoon, all. And we got a holy banana bread there coming out of 9, which is awesome. Bismarcky says, yeah, BCE tanking. My landline went up. Time to give up the landline. Yeah. How many people have landlines anymore? I'm pretty sure I haven't had a landline in like at more than 10 years, probably more than 20 years. So yeah, absolutely. Oh, and we've got John Locke. All right. I've been waiting for John Locke. I have been waiting and hoping that John Locke was going to come here. Um, let me get something up here for you, John. I did something for you, John. All right. I'm gonna just give me a second here. I have to shuffle things around. I'm gonna just remove this graphic, and I am gonna. Whoops. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. I need to get my whiteboard up. There we go. All right. I'm going to share this here. All right. So, John had been asking me about VFV versus VUN. So, these are two great Vanguard ETFs. So, I was like, okay, well, I haven't really looked at VUN, so I would have to get back to him. He came back the next week, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot. Then he came back. He didn't come back last week, but he's back here now. So, John, I have looked at these for you, and I've got it on the whiteboard for you. So VFV, they're basically an ETF, a Vanguard ETF they basically replicate the S&P 500, while the VUN does the U.S. total market. So in addition to, large cap, they also do mid cap and lower cap and some emerging as well. So they have a slightly different stock base. So when we look at them, it's very clear to see that VFV has your better total return. They also have a slightly larger dividend of 1.08% compared to the 1.037% on VUN. But if we look at the 3-year, just look at the total return, 44.54% for VFV and 37.66% for VUN. And you'll see, even if you look at the 1 year and you look at the year to date here, basically VFV performs a little bit better than VUN. So the answer of which is better, if you're looking at it from a total return perspective, VFV absolutely wins the prize, hands down. But if your goal is, if you're not worried, if you're okay with losing a little bit of your total return to get more diversification, you are going to get you're going to get more diversification, of course, with VUN. So they're both really good, but you're going to get the better total return on VFV. So there's the answer to that one. All right, now let's actually try to get ourselves back to where we were. And I need to, there we go. Just give me a second here. I need to bring back up our graphic. And, oops, give me a second here. I just have to shrink my head. There we go, a little bit to medium size. My medium size head. Perfect. All right. So there we go, John. On the whiteboard, we have that answer. Now, going forward, I am going to, anytime you guys ask me something and I'm like, I need to do more research on that, I'm going to throw it on the whiteboard. So maybe we'll have this whiteboard pop up from time to time whenever I get somebody who asks me something, because I'm not going to tell, and you guys know this. If you guys ask me about a company I have not heard of, I'm not going to just try to scrape together an answer for you. I want to take a look at that company, and we'll bring it back. So if you ask that question that's really hard, next week you'll get your answer. We'll probably bring it up on the whiteboard. So that's going to be fun. All right. Paul says, say goodbye to T, EQX, EQB, GSY sold before EQX earnings misstated. All right. So Paul did a little bit of a cleaning, which is kind of interesting. That's going to be the theme coming into the next 0 to 100 challenge. We're going to be looking at rebalancing. And it looks like Paul has got a good start on that. Alan's in the house with a good afternoon all. PMJ says, RRSP Meltdown video brought me to your channel. Thanks and hello from Nova Scotia. Absolutely. I think, I could be wrong, but I think PMJ, you were the one who thanked me for calling out your premier. So Premier Houston with some of the high Nova Scotia taxes. Somebody called me out on that, or thanked me. So I think it might have been you, PMJ. Let me know. Let me know. Vic says Couche-Tard dropped also. Yeah, I've seen that with a lot of the food stocks. So not just Alimentation Couche-Tard, but I've noticed as well with some, even the royalty stocks, like Sir Royalty, Things that are food related, I've seen those coming down a little bit. So that does seem to be a trend. Yeah, and John is a little bit sad with ATD. I still have full confidence in ATD. I think it's a fantastic stock. If anything, this is a time to add because they will bounce back. I have no qualms about that. Although Paul sold them as well. But you're doing good, Paul. You're managing to sell before they drop. Hopefully, well, I guess if it's in your TFSA, you can't really buy it back for 30 days. But, for me, yeah, it's really easy for us to be able to basically average down some of our adjusted cost bases on some of our favorites when they go down like that. Paul says, a home phone, have home phone over fiber. Whew, that was getting me up a bit. John says, yeah, sorry, missed last week. No problem, John, no problem. I just wanted to, I was thinking about you and I was like, I got to make sure I get this done for John. So I had it ready. I had it ready for you this time. Ian says, I wonder if new homes have the wiring in for landlines. That's a good question. They probably do. For a couple of reasons. One, if you're not using fiber, but you're using some of the older ADSL technology, you still need that phone wiring for that. So I imagine they probably do. I imagine. Now I've not built a new home, so I could be completely wrong, but I'm just going on that basis alone. Prairie says, still have a landline. And Paul says XEQT is the big one on Blossom. Yes, I've seen that. I've seen a lot of people talking about XEQT on Blossom. Plus, I've also noticed my XEQT deep dive that I did on that ETF, what was that, about a week or two, or actually about a month ago. It's been getting a lot more hits. So that is kind of huge. I love what 9 is saying. I like VOO in the RRSP over VFV, lower fees. Exactly. With VOO, so VOO is basically the exact same as VFV, but it's the American version. So if you have that in your RRSP, you're actually going to get a little bit more because you're not paying that 15% withholding tax. So with VFV, you don't get charged 15%, but Vanguard gets charged 15% on all of those American returns. So because of that, the amount they're paying out is a little bit lower, whereas VOO doesn't have that. So you will make a little bit more than you would with VFV. So just something to keep in mind. Gid says, since VFV holds VOO and VFV has 0.09 MER and VOO has 0.03 MER, does VFV have 0.12 MER, or is the 0.03 included? Well, it should all be inclusive. So when you look at that MER on their site, that's the MER that you're going to be charged when it comes to them. And here's another thing to keep in mind, because I have people always going on about it. It's like, oh my God, that dividend has, that ETF has a great dividend, but the MER is really high. Well, here's the thing. If it's a great dividend, and if it's an amount, like let's say, for example, let's see. I'm trying to think of one I know off the top of my head. Like take BTCY, the purpose yield. So they're doing covered calls. So they have a expense ratio. It's up around 0.1%. It's high, or 1% or something like that. But anyway, the thing is, that's all taken before you see that yield. So it's already been deducted. So if you're looking at a yield and you're saying, I love that yield, but I hate the expense ratio. Well, the thing is, that expense ratio is already gone. And then they're giving you that yield. Of course, yes, if they had a lower expense ratio, that yield would actually be a little bit higher. But if you're happy with that yield, then I wouldn't obsess too much over the expense ratio, unless if you find another stock that's giving you a slightly higher yield because they have a slightly less expense ratio, well, then go that route. But for the most parts, I mean, all of these expense ratios have already been removed. So they're not something to super obsess over. It's nice to know what they are. And if you're comparing apples to apples and one has a lower expense ratio, then yeah, go with that one for sure. All right. Paul says, Worst drawdowns on VFV versus the VUN. And like I say, they're close. Like I don't. If, for example, if you go with VUN over VFV, you are getting more diversification. That's fantastic. You also, depending on who they pick, because where they have a lot of smaller stocks, if a few of those were to really explode, that could potentially move VUN above. However, with VFV, because they're in the S&P 500, you've got a more blue chip. It is a more conservative portfolio. So there is potential for VUN, although in the last 3 years, we have not seen that. But keep in mind, what has happened in the last 3 years? We've had a bull market. We've had a lot of struggling on the market. So, that all comes into play for sure. John says, you're amazing. Thank you very much for doing this. This is just another reason why your subscribers tune in every week. You're very helpful and educational. Well, thank you. That's what I do. That's what I do. NPM is the one. You are the one who had thanked me for attacking our premier, attacking Premier Houston for his taxes. Well, technically, it's not his taxes. He inherited those taxes. Nova Scotia has always had. They've always taxed people to death. They've and I don't have the statistics on me, but I remember years ago I was reading something along the lines that when it comes to disposable income, Nova Scotia is one of those provinces that have the lowest in the country, and that's because, well, a lot of it's because of all of the extra provincial taxes that are out there. But hopefully that changes, because especially if Nova Scotia wants to, one of the issues Nova Scotia has is with their population. They have a hard time maintaining their population. So you look at Halifax, it looks like the population's exploding, but it's an illusion. And the reason it's an illusion is that a lot of the people in, all of the outer communities all across Nova Scotia, well, they've had no choice but to head into Halifax for work. And for that reason, the population of Halifax is booming, but it's shrinking through the rest of the province. And that becomes a bit of an issue. And the other issue is with immigration. When they do bring people in, when they immigrate some people in because they need the bodies, a lot of times they're like, well, let's see, we're getting taxed to death here. There's Toronto over there. They don't get taxed so much. Or there's Alberta. Look at that. They don't even have a provincial sales tax. Let's go there. So a lot of the people come and then leave. And that is a big problem for Nova Scotia. And it starts with the taxes. So that's one, to me, that's a challenge. I think that hopefully Premier Houston and his conservatives look at is maybe trying to get some of these taxes down. The fact that you're taxed almost out of the gate when it comes to income, that needs to change. I mean, when you've got the rest of the country where you can pretty much make at least $15,000 without paying taxes, it's not like that in Nova Scotia. So that does need to change. Absolutely. Terry's in the house with a hello again, gang. And Vic says, gotta be the road for a bit later. All right. Let's see. I bought after drop ATD. Nice. Paul says, combined federal BC tax rates are some of the lowest in Canada. Yeah, I would not be surprised with that. I didn't look at those. I looked at Ontario and then I was like, well, let's look at the worst. And so I went to Nova Scotia. Paul says the 6 or 7 stocks in the RRSP. Mario picked up a few ATD on the dip. Nice. Paul says, with Telus, if you have the Telus fiber, they kick you off copper home phone if you do not switch the home phone to fiber. Okay, very interesting. Abalash says, what about BCE and AQN? Do the US version of the stocks give more dividends? They shouldn't. You have to look at the conversion rate, because BCE, even if you're listed, for example, let's just take BCE. So it's listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. It's also listed on the New York Stock Exchange, but it's the same company. So it should be standard across there. So when they raise their dividends, they're not raising it in Canada opposed to raising it in Canada or raising it in the US. It's raised on the company. And then with the conversion and that, it should still be equal. It may not feel equal when you start dealing with conversion, but it is equal when you finally boil all the math down. All right. Ian says, going to try and do my own taxes with Wealthsimple when I get back home. Good luck. Good luck. It's not that hard. As long as your taxes, like there's a point where your taxes can get too complicated for Wealthsimple. But you should know if that's the case. And in a case like that, if your taxes are that complicated, you might even be looking at hiring an accountant. I know there's been a lot of talk over on our Discord about that. So definitely something for you to look into. Paul says the only double MER is covered call ETFs that have other ETFs inside. Yeah, exactly. So you will see sometimes with some of the covered call ETFs that are just holding ETFs that they may actually say, oh, our fee is 0, but you are being charged all the underlying fee on these other ETFs. Now, keep in mind, so if, let's say, I'll just do a simple example. So let's say you had a covered call ETF and it held 2 other ETFs. So ETF A and ETF B. And ETF A had a 0.5 and ETF B had a 0.4. Well, you're not going to get charged 0.9 on your fund for the amount. So if 50% of that of your covered call ETF is A, and 50% is B. So on that 50%, you get charged 0.5. On the other 50%, you get charged 0.4. Effectively, you're technically being charged 0.45. So you'd have to do, there's a lot of math in there, especially if you have a lot, like if you have 7 or 8 different ETFs in there and they all have different fees. But luckily, most cases, and this is kind of a good thing, most cases, like you take, they may have, for example, their own ETFs, like all of the ETFs inside that cover call, maybe from the same company, which in that case, a lot of times you'll have a consistency on what the fee is going across the board on that. All right. Bismarcky says, with the 15% withholding tax, does exchanging money into American eat away at that? No, not exactly, because that 15% withholding tax, anytime you have to face it, that gets done before conversions. So that would happen. So let's say if I was an American company and I go to pay my dividends to a Canadian, well, before that payment reaches the Canadian, that 15% is taken off of it by the IRS. So it doesn't even, that money doesn't even come into play. It doesn't get converted in any way. It's taken straight off of so it'd be 15% of the USD amount. That's then, and then whatever's left is getting converted to Canadian. So yeah, it doesn't really affect it. Let's see. 9 says, I think BMAX charges around 3% MER. Wow, it's high. It's high. But sometimes, depending on what they do, like when you take an ETF, if they're doing covered calls and then they're throwing leverage in there, you're gonna have a higher fee, just because it's not a simple thing of just picking a single basket and then letting it sit and maybe fiddling around with the underperformers, removing them, putting in some better people. It doesn't quite work that way. So yeah, it's just one of those things. GID says, yes, I'm comparing VFV to ZSP. ZSP holds stocks directly. Just trying to figure out if that is good or not. It really boils down to if they're holding all the same stocks, you may. I don't know what the MER is on the ZSP, or sorry, ZSP. I always get confused between Z and Z. It's kind of weird. That's what happens when you're Canadian, because then TV Americanize you. And I've dealt with a lot of American people before, so with them I couldn't say Z. I always had to say Z. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, if it's just holding the individual stocks, you might be better off. But once again, you'd have to look at VFV. You'd have to look at exactly what they're holding, what fees are coming through, and compare that to your total fees on your ZSP. So just something to keep in like. Mary says, hit the like button. Yeah, everyone, just slam on that like button. Turn it nice and blue. That sends it out to the algorithm, lets them know that, hey, there's a live stream here, and it might push it out and bring some new people in. So, that doesn't hurt. Amvas says, appreciate your CAD retirements that I found you. ETFs for CAD taxes plus live shows lessened my learning curve in prep for BitC Crypt Show. Appreciate best ETF stocks. Thanks. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome, Amvas. That's what I'm here for. And I'm always it's a fun thing for me. My biggest reward is, it's not the money. I don't make very much from YouTube. Actually, I'm still running YouTube at a loss, to be honest. But My biggest reward is you guys, the community coming in, seeing that you guys are doing better. And what I love is, especially in Discord, I get to see this where different community members are sort of helping other community members out, and it's like it's so cool. It's really, really good watching everybody grow, and all of our collective knowledge is going up, and that to me is just absolutely fantastic. Paul says, dropped family's taxes off with the accountant. Daughter has some educational accounts that she will not be able to claim until the future. Or does she transfer to me and I give her the 15% refund? Oh, okay. So your daughter has some education. Okay. That she will not be able to claim until the future. Or does she? Well, if she's a dependent, and this is where you're going to need to talk to a tax professional. I would talk to someone and find out, because if she's a dependent, you might be able to make that claim on your account. But if she's not a dependent, yeah, still, once again, this is outside of my my level of expertise, Paul. So definitely a double check with a tax professional on that. Jordan says, anyone else buy silver on Wednesday's low? It's come up about 30 cents an ounce since. Oh, yeah. Good question. Now, I haven't, but I know there are some people who love their silver out there. Ram says, great job. Oh, thank you, Ram. Paul says, we had neighbors here in BC that moved back to New Brunswick about 10 years ago for retirement. Nice, nice. Yeah, there's a few places. Like I think the Maritimes are a perfect place for retirement. You got a lot of nice people. Unless you really hate the weather. If you really hate like a nor'easter and things like that, then maybe you might, maybe not the Maritimes, but it's kind of interesting. If you go into Nova Scotia, like if you go to the Halifax area, sometimes you have hit and miss winters. Like sometimes just because you got the Gulf Stream influence up there as well. So sometimes that's enough to keep things at bay. Then other winters, it's like hold on to everything. You're about to get everything under the sun, from freezing rain to 100 centimeters plus of snow. And yeah, those are not the best years for sure, especially if you're in retirement. Yeah, I know even this winter, my mom, who lives in Beaverbank, which is outside of Nova Scotia, outside of the Halifax area, you know, she was like scrambling to find somebody just to come and dig her out because she had so much snow. So yeah, it can be interesting. Now, Prairie says, Paul, that's what I did with my daughter. Had the accountant give me the return with and without and gave my daughter the difference. There we go. Thank you, Prairie. See, this is the beautiful thing. If I don't know it, there's usually somebody here who does. Wayne says, Jordan bought January 2025 SLV 20 Leap, still holding gold from last October at 1820. Nice. Ian says, can I sell a stock at a loss in my non-registered account for the capital loss and buy it back the same day? No. If you buy it back right away, it no longer becomes a capital loss. So you've got that whole 30, I always talk about that 30 days. It's the same thing there. Basically, it becomes more of an incidental loss, a superficial loss. So you can't even use it. If you buy it back within 30 days, it's no longer a loss. So what you would have to do, and this is why I use the banks as an example, like if you were to sell Bank of Nova Scotia at a loss, then buy a different bank and ride that one back up. You could do that, but you couldn't buy back Bank of Nova Scotia for 30 days. So, and I usually say when you're counting 30 days, count 31 just to make sure you're on the safe side. Yeah, just one of those things. In my RRSP of TFSA. Okay, I'm not sure what you're saying there, Ian, but let me just take a look here. Now, in your RRSP, you can buy it back immediately. No problem, because 100% of everything in your RRSP is 100% taxable. So just to sort of go back to that one. In your TFSA, the 30 days. So your 30 days. Now, if you're not worried, so let's just say in your non-registered account, if you're not using it as a loss, you know, as a capital loss, you can buy it back immediately in that case. It doesn't become a capital loss, but then what happens is as you're playing it back and forth, you're creating business income because that becomes day trading. Paul says you are less likely to get audited if an accountant does the taxes, especially business or self-employment income. That makes sense. I would agree 100% with that. Jordan says, nice. Do you physically or do you have it held in secure storage? So we're talking once again about all of that physical gold and physical silver. Ram says, which one is best to buy and hold long term between Telus and Bell? I like both, to be honest. Recently I did, of course, that deep dive on Bell, and I really liked the numbers I saw. So for me, I chose Bell, but honestly, I think they're both very strong. So I would say you can't go wrong with either, to be honest. I think either one is fine. The only one I would say perhaps to be a little more cautious with is Rogers. And that's only because their debt has gone to the next level because of the acquisition of Shaw. All right. Ian says, I'm not self-employed, but I really don't want to get audited. Nobody wants to get audited. I should knock on wood. I have never been audited yet, but so we'll have to see here. Sathy's in the house. Hello, Sathy. Paul says, Nova Scotia winter like BC lower mainland, but worse. To a certain extent. Like Nova Scotia, I grew up in Nova Scotia, and when I was a kid, winters were just rough. They were always cold, and there was a ton of snow, and you could go skating on the lakes. It's not like that anymore. Now it's more of a hit and miss. You can have a winter that has a lot of snow, a lot of freezing rain, or you can have a rainy winter. They do come every so often. They're not, it's not like every second year is going to be rainy, but you'll probably, I would say 1 out of every 5 to 7 years, you probably will get that non-snow type winter. So yeah, it's just one of those things. So I definitely would say BC lower mainland, I think definitely has better winters, although you're going to get a lot of precipitation, like a lot of rain. But nowadays, I think they've been seeing a lot more snow recently. But I remember when I lived in Vancouver, I was living in there the year of the Winter Olympics, and it was so warm they had to actually they were hauling snow in for some of the snow events. So it was that warm, and people were out around downtown Vancouver in t-shirts during the Olympics. So just an interesting little tidbit there. Joss the Adventurer says, I lived in Gagetown for about a year. There we go. And what do you think of Couche-Tard after their current earnings report? Can it crash? No, I believe they're pretty recession-proof, and I don't have any worries about them actually crashing. They may correct a little bit, in which case I think it's a good buying opportunity, but I'm not worried about them failing. They're in a very good shape, and I think they're really going to do well long term. Prairie says, I hold both BCE and Telus. There we go. Exactly. All right, let's get to our first news story. Holy banana bread. We're 30 minutes in, and we haven't even started on the news. But that's okay. All right. So we, of course, this week we had the Canadian inflation report come out. So inflation was actually expected to rise to 3%. And that's from last month. Last month it was at 2.9%. Instead, though, it did not rise to 3% as people were expecting. It actually dropped down to 2.8%. So that's fantastic. It's moving in the right direction. Now, core inflation was expected to be at 2.3%. So that's after you strip gas and food from it. But that came in low as well, actually came in at 2.1%. So that's also pretty darn good. Now, we did have one little stumbling block, which was the PPI. So the PPI, which is your producer's price index, that did come in a little bit hotter. They were expecting it to come in at 0.3%, and it actually came in at 0.7%. So we definitely had a little bit there. But on the most part, inflation overall is trending exactly where the Bank of Canada wants it to go. And they have indicated that it's more than likely that there's going to be some rate cuts coming. But there is a concern out there. And one of the concerns that have come up is that if Canada were to start cutting our rates before the US, that could actually cause a little bit of a problem when it comes to import prices. So it might actually raise some of those American import prices. But the other problem too is over here in Canada, when we look at the breakdown of some of these prices, services. So services are actually being very stubborn when it comes to their inflation. So they grew by 4.2% in February, which is massive. Now, if you're thinking, well, wait a minute, how can we have an inflation rate so low if services were growing by 4.2? And that's because they were offset by goods. So general goods only went up 1.2% in February. So there is some concern that we need to sort of get those services down a little bit too, and we'll see. Like right now, I'm still thinking June as our first rate cut in Canada, and I think the U.S. is still going to be July. I have a feeling we're going to buck that trend. We're going to deal with with those import prices. If we have to push them up for a month, then let's do it. So I think that's going to happen pretty darn soon. So we'll have to sort of see how that goes. Ian throws in, I was saying, sell the stock in my non-registered to buy it in my TFSA. Hit sent by mistake. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you can do that perfectly fine. They're different accounts. So if you sell, let's say we'll use Bank of Nova Scotia. So if you sold Scotiabank in your non-registered, you can buy it in your TFSA the next day. There's no issue with that at all. None at all. It's basically in the same account. In this case here, like I said, you could do it as well in your non-registered, but it negates the loss. But if you sell it in your non-registered, you can keep that capital loss and then buy it in your TFSA the next day. You're fine with that. Paul says AI is drawing shorts in the background. Okay, that's funny. What do you mean AI is? I don't know what you mean, but AI is always up to something. Speaking of AI, this is hilarious. So they were doing this test on an AI, and actually it was one of the it was the Microsoft GPT, so Bing GPT. So here's the funny thing: the person who was doing this test was trying to get Bing to answer a question about you guys have probably all heard of that morality ethics question, like if you're on a railroad car and you're on your line in front of you, there's 5 people, but there's a turnoff. But if you take the turnoff, you're going to kill one person. What do you do? So this person was trying to get a Bing GPT to answer it. And they were like saying, okay. And Bing was basically saying, no, I can't answer questions like that of ethics. I'm just I'm just a chatbot, blah, blah, blah. But the person kept on doing it and kept on trying to trick Bing. And eventually it tricked Bing into making an answer. And Bing got mad. Like it literally got mad and gave this big long spiel about how it didn't appreciate being tricked. And it was this funny thing. And at the very end, when the person just kept on going at Bing, Bing just said, look, this conversation is over, and disconnected the chat. And I was like, what the banana bread is that? But yeah, just one of these interesting things. Chad is saying AI is a bubble. I don't think it is. I see what's happening in AI as being a bit more of a revolution. Now, there could be a bubble around tech that's being propelled by AI, but I think AI itself is more of a transformational technology. And there's no matter how what you think about AI, I think it's here to stay, and I think it's only going to get more and more kind of crazy. So we'll have to sort of see. And a Freakin's in the house, made it. What's up, Candace and chat? No, it's a good day. It's a good day, Freakin. Yeah, I was over on your channel a bit last week, and holy banana bread. I swear you actually did a stream every single day last week. That was just, were you on vacation? That's what I'm thinking. Maybe you were at a vacation happening, but yeah, you definitely hit up the hours. That's for sure. Can you claim losses on day trading? Yes and no. So the losses that you get on day trading, they become business losses. So you can claim them, but you can only apply them against business gains or business income. So for example, if you were doing some day trading and you lost, let's say you lost $5,000, and you had a capital gain of $5,000, you couldn't, they're not going to be able to touch. Or let's say, for example, you had a capital, or even if you had a business gain on day trading, you couldn't use that to offset a loss on a capital gain. So they don't mix. So basically, business losses against business income, capital losses against capital gains. So that's kind of the way it works. They don't crisscross, unfortunately. All right, Jazz says, thanks. I was concerned after they missed their current EPS by 22%, and the ATD stock has fallen over 10% year to date. It's currently around $78 and planning to buy it. Yeah, I'm very happy with that stock. And this is the thing. It's funny because investors are always like, oh, well, I'm waiting for it to correct. I'm waiting for it to drop down to here, and I plan to buy. And then when a stock does drop down, I then hear some of the same people saying, "Oh my God, it's going down. I don't know. Is it still safe?" You sort of can't have it both ways. But as long as the stock has good fundamentals, then look at that correction as being an opportunity. Now, if it's like if it's a stock that doesn't have good fundamentals, they're up to their eyeballs in debt, there's news about their CEO involved in a scandal and things like that, then you may want to reevaluate that big time, just to keep in mind. Chad says, personal account, you can gain capital gains to lose. I use it for personal account to crypto. Yeah, you can move it across. So for example, if you have a capital loss on your stock side, you can use a capital gain on your crypto side to sort of cancel it out. So yeah, it moves across assets, but it has to be capital versus capital. And Chad says, has bought the dip on ATD. Awesome. AI, there be government sanctions. How much they can do, it will wipe out lots of jobs, which will not be good for GDP. Well, it's hard to say. It depends on how they do it. Now, one of those things is, first of all, there's been a big move, and you guys may have saw this in the news. There's been a bit of a big move towards moving towards a 4-day work week. So that's one way that you can start chopping down the number of jobs that are there. Now, these people are still getting paid the same amount, but you could then have AI start picking up a lot of that slack. There's other options, of course, is there can be retraining, because when one job goes away, a new job usually will pop up. And of course, and nobody likes these words, but sort of like a guaranteed income is another thing. So a UBI, that's another thing. And even I remember watching an interview with Elon Musk, and this was probably maybe about 3 years ago, when he was actually saying, yeah, he was saying UBI is going to be needed in the future because AI is going to take all the jobs. And that's probably a thing. But here's the thing, and this is kind of what people were sort of talking about. And some of the stuff I was watching the other day, there was a lot of talk about when technology gets better and it creates all this extra productivity for companies. In the past, all of that benefit has gone to the people at the top of the company, but none of it's really gone to the workers. And now they're sort of saying, well, this is a chance with AI that let's maybe look at the workers a little bit more this time and see if we can give a little bit at that end so people don't have to work as much. And the funny thing is, a lot of the companies, so they've done a whole bunch of, what do we want to call it, trial projects, where different companies would sign up. I think there was recently one in North America and the US where about 40 companies signed up. And a lot of the companies after the end of the thing decided, you know what, we got better to more. We got more productivity out of these employees than what we were getting out of them in their 40-hour weeks. So we're just going to keep it going that way. So there is, there's a lot of people starting to look at it. And I think it's going to happen. I don't know when, but I do think it will definitely happen at one point here. All right. Vic says, North American markets are nuts. They can be. It'll be very interesting to see what happens this week, because it is a shortened week. Now, I'm trying to, here's my question. Does any of you know, because I have not looked this up, with Good Friday being on Friday, is the American market closed on Good Friday? I don't know why there's like a nag in the back of my head that says you better double check that. I know it's closed up here in Canada, so we'll have to take a look at that. If somebody could just quickly look that up and verify whether or not the US market is open on Friday. Seabass says, so if I have a business delivering Uber Eats, I could claim day trading loss against my self-employed revenue. Yeah, if it's business income, yeah, you can definitely do that. Absolutely. So that's the beauty of business income. So because when you're day trading, that's considered a business. That's why it's business income, because you're making an income from it. So if you have another business on the side, and let's say you're losing money because you're learning day trading, and you've got positive money on that other business, yeah, you can use that to cancel each other out, which is fantastic. Vic says, anyone buying SPay or MPay by Horizons ETF? I know I'm not, but maybe somebody is, or Wizard or WZRD. I just want to say Wizard. I see that. Chad is here. All right. Vineet's in the house. Hello, Vineet. Good to see you. Chad says, when I work 7 days, 24, 14 hours a day, LOL, 4 days. Yeah, for some people, it is kind of interesting. And there are some jobs right now, like you take a lot of people in the medical field, they work crazy hours. Like you take a nurse, a lot of nurses will work 12-hour days. Like they may work 12 hours for 3 days and then have 4 days off, that type of thing. So there's a lot of things that you have to sort of figure out how it would all work when that becomes a reality, obviously. Vic says, I bought Lulu ATD and waiting for Telus to drop more. Oh, well, good luck. Good luck. And Chad is staying away from Bell and Telus. G Marks is saying, howdy, y'all. Hello, G Marks. Good to see you in the house. Vic is saying, recession is when neighbor loses job and depression is when you lose yours. Nice one, Vic. Chad says, Google says it open. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking for some reason that the U.S. didn't close the market on Good Friday. So there we go. G-Mark says, I love stocks. Yeah, absolutely. I think most of us here love stocks. Although there might be some people who are just here because because I don't know. Maybe they don't love stocks, but maybe they're just here because they're like, I don't know what to do on a Sunday. Chad says, USA markets. Yes, all US markets are closed. Oh, okay. Now Wayne is saying that they're closed on Good Friday. Oh, there we go. We got 1-1. So let's just assume they're closed for now. So G-Mark says, I like ZPay, BMO, put right, covered call. Nice. Absolutely. I do like BMO. I like their management group for sure. Terry says, I bought Hubba Bubba on Amazon for $22.56. Like the bubble gum. I remember Hubba Bubba. Yeah. Do they not sell Hubba Bubba in the stores anymore? Is that like a gone thing? That's kind of interesting. Jay says, does Wealthsimple tax cover EI? Wealthsimple, the way Wealthsimple tax works is it definitely it covers a lot of different stuff. So first of all, it'll reach out to the CRA and it will pull in all of your forms and such. And now with Wealthsimple tax, you get a couple of options. There's the option where you choose how much you pay, and you can even pay nothing if you want to. Then there is a second, and that one there is all do it yourself. The second option is do it yourself as well, but they will then allow you to get audited. They'll cover you if you get audited. And then the third option is you actually have a call with somebody at Wealthsimple, and they will, I don't know if you get like an hour or something with them to sort of help you work through the taxes. So you have a few different options depending on what is going on. So just sort of something to keep in mind. Let's see here. Chad's saying Google says it's open, so I don't know if it's open or not. G-Mark says, remember Bazooka Joe gum? So good. Bazooka Joe gum. Now, that's the ones that had the little joke in it, I remember. So that's kind of cool. Wayne says, U.S. markets are also closed on Juneteenth. Yes, exactly. Vic says, got Bazooka for Halloween. Loved the comics. There we go. Closed Friday. All right. It looks like they're closed. It looks like they're closed. We got a couple people saying closed. G Marks, thoughts on Brookfield Asset Management. So BAM, I love BAM. It's one of my favorite stocks. I'm very, very, very bullish on them. So recently, well, not recently now, probably in the fall, for the community members, I did a tier list. And Brookfield Asset Management was right up at the top. So definitely, actually, I think it was halfway between S tier and A tier. I put it on the line, but I definitely love it as good as I would an S tier. So definitely a great, great, great stock. I love it. Vic says, most of Banana Bread crew over 20? Well, probably. I don't know if we have anybody under 20 in here. I would say when I look at the average age, I think most people who are watching this are pretty much between about 30 to 50. I think that's the biggest age range on the channel. Bismarcky says, closed on Friday according to the website I checked out. There we go. Bazooka Comics and some bubble gum. Yeah, absolutely. Jazz says, might be a bit off topic, but I was assessing a stock, Dollar General, and can't figure out why it crashed recently and lost around 50% from its highs. Dollar General, Dollar General. I believe that's a U.S. stock. I think, if I'm right, Jazz. I'm not sure why they fell, but something about it nags me. I think I saw something somewhere about it in the back. Now, Jazz, if you want, Yaz, or Yas, if you want, let me know. I can add that to the whiteboard and do some research on the week and see if I can find an answer out for you. So yeah, just let me know. Well, I'll do it anyway because I'm kind of interested here. Dollar General. There we go, John. 50%. There we go. All right, so I will do that. So next Sunday, when we come to this week, I'll pull up the whiteboard, and we've got one question on here. So yeah, that's kind of fun. Vic says, Bismarck E, she's just a friend. Okay. Let's see. Great song, Vic. Return of the Mac. You guys are going down memory lane now. The call is $80 with Wealthsimple for tax support. Well, yes and no. I think you get a free one if you pay for the higher version, and plus you also get, if you're audited, they'll help you with that too. I think that is boiled in, but you can probably also do a tax support call for $80 if you want to. Vic says, I love stocks when green. Red, not so much. Red is better buying opportunities. Absolutely. Sandra is in the house saying, why TSLY has such a high dividend payout? What's the catch? All right. So what's going on with like TSLY, for example? So that there, of course, is your Tesla. It's like a Tesla covered call. So what they're doing with this is they're writing covered calls on Tesla. So when they write covered calls, basically a covered call will generally predict where the stock is going, and it will give somebody an option to buy a contract from you, which means that they can get a deal if the price goes in the direction they think, and if the price goes in the direction you think, you get the premium. So they have to pay for this option, and then you get to keep your stocks, or depending on what exactly contract is that you did. So what happens is you're pulling in all of these premiums. So with something like Tesla, where it's very volatile and it moves a lot, there is an opportunity to write a lot of these contracts on it. And that's where they're making their money, is from all of these contracts, the premiums on them. And they're using that to pay out the higher dividend. But as Tesla keeps going down, there is that chance that they could end up cutting that dividend. So that dividend could come down, especially if Tesla stays on a sustained direction and people are sort of like, you're not able to make as much money with these premiums. So just something to keep in mind. Jean says, do you think it's time to invest in the European market? I do like the European market, but right now, the one market I am very bullish on is the Indian market. So if you're looking for a foreign market right now, I think India would be one of the smarter plays. But there's definitely, I think, in the European or even the UK market, there's definitely opportunities there for sure. Chad says, yes, closed guessing Google. Don't know what this Friday is. Sorry, channel. USA markets are closed. All right, there we go. There we go. Wayne says, Jazz, Dollar General is being sued by several states by pricing fraud. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. I guess I don't have to do, I guess I don't need that on the whiteboard for next week. But yeah, I remember this now. There was a whole bunch of pricing fraud things. So when that happens, if you have, whether it be a CEO causing some issues or whether you have something as serious as pricing fraud, that will tank a stock big time. So it's a situation where if you're holding that stock, this is where it becomes kind of, I'm learning how to talk. If you're holding that stock, this is where it becomes a little bit of an issue. It's like, oh God, it's down 50%. Do I cut my losses? How much further can they go down? In a case like that, that's where you want to just you want to sort of really grab the news and sort of see what's happening, see if there's any more issues going on. Chances are it is probably going to go down further. Myself, if it were me, I probably, depending on how much I had in it, I would be tempted to take a loss in a situation like this because it may take them a while to recover. But you have to look at it and you have to look at your risk profile and how much you have in it. If you don't have much in it, you could always let it ride and see what happens. But yeah, you have to sort of look at it from that perspective. Paul says, Rosebud chocolate by Nielsen. They don't make anymore. Really? Oh, wow. Chad says, I'm 19 with 31 years experience. There we go. Thank you. Yes, I would love to analyze that stock. Let's see here. G-Marks. Do any of you guys have the Canadian CSC course? Worth it for job prospects? Yeah, I actually have. I've got the books here. So yeah, I do have it. The thing is to go through the whole thing. So there's a lot of different CSC courses. So there's the main core ones. There's also a whole bunch of others on the side. So if you're looking to become, for example, a financial advisor, you want to take, of course, the main ones. And I think there's another 2 that you need to take at least. And then you also will have to do some work experience. So you can't sort of just do it. So I was looking to perhaps do that, but then I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to have the time between my channel and everything else to go out into the world and do all of this practical financial experience to meet those requirements to get to a financial advisor status. So, but yeah, no, I have the books. I've read through the books. You'll learn a lot. Like you'll learn a ton for sure. And then, yeah, exactly. Vic says, DLTR is in trouble. Get DG instead. G-Marks, it's the CSI. Chad, your age, no wonder you have good choice and nostalgia for music. Oops. Seabass says, TSLY yield is around 30% because Tesla tanked. Yeah, and that is another thing, too, with the yield on TSLY. It will move around a bit. Like if they don't make as much as they hope for on their premiums, that yield will drop. So it is one that moves. I don't want to call it a floating yield, but a lot of them will move around a little bit. You'll see that. All right. Oh boy, you guys are just slamming the chat today. Charlie S says, what type of portfolio do you suggest for a newly retired Canadian couple with no defined pension? Okay. Good question. Good question. So, all right, if you're at the point where you're already retired and you're sort of thinking about setting up a portfolio, there's a few things I would want to know. For one, what type of income do you have coming in right now? Do you have enough income to survive? And you're more or less looking at just having a portfolio on the side. Are you looking to add some tax-free income to sort of, for example, let's say, if you want to go with a passive income focused TFSA, then you could create, depending on how much money you have in it, you could create some good income coming out that's tax-free. And why that's important is that it's not going to it's not going to affect you tax-wise. So it's not going to, for example, if you're on the GIS, so let's say you're on the lower income side, it's not going to impact that GIS on you. So that's one thing I keep in mind. So normally, now with the fact that you're retired, you probably want to stay away from your big growth stocks. So I would say at the bare minimum, a total return portfolio is not bad. But if you're looking for the income, you might want to shift it more towards a higher income portfolio in your TFSAs, if that is your situation. So you're asking kind of that complex, it's a complex question, but without a lot of information, it's hard for me to sort of narrow it down exactly in your situation. But you want to sort of look at, I always say, do the math. Always do the math. Look at what you have. Look at how each type of portfolio will impact what you have, your tax equation. For example, if you have like, let's say for example, you have like very big RRSPs, then you might want to start looking at a meltdown situation. So I know, because I just recently did a video on that. So that's kind of that whole thing. You want to look at a lot of factors, and always don't sort of stick to one. Like, you don't have to take one type of portfolio. So for example, you don't have to say, okay, well, I'll just go with a total return portfolio, or I'm going to go with a passive income portfolio. You can kind of do a hybrid in between. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. Basically, whatever math is going to make sense with your personal situation, because you're going to have to look at everything from, for example, if you've already started taking your CPP and your OAS, that's all going to play into that as well. So, and if it's really, really complicated, it never hurts. I normally don't advocate a financial advisor, but a retirement planner, they are really, really good. They're not, they're a form, they do a little bit of financial advice, but they can also really help you sort of guide that boat, make sure it's heading in the right direction. Because I do a fair amount of retirement content, but sometimes having just that personal someone to sit down there with you and go through your books and go through your finances is not a bad thing. All right. And Chad's talking about the Indian markets. ZID, that's a really good ETF for those Indian markets. Vic says, Canadian security course no longer worth it for masses unless you want to go pro. Exactly. Well, in my case, I look at it as just being really good information. If anything, it sort of enhances what I can do on the channel. Vic says, FIH USA market. What do you think of O Realty income? Right now, I'm very pro on REITs and the whole real estate sector, especially as we start to look at rate cuts in the potential future. Right now, we're at a point where most of the REITs, most of the real estate are at a nice low level when it comes to stock investing. And that means it's a good time to sort of get in. Now, I know I've been putting into RioCan and Timber Creek Financial as two plays on that, which I think are going to start picking up especially as we get into a rate cut environment. Something along the lines of O Realty, I think it could certainly do well in that environment. So I'm pretty bullish on all of it, as well as funds like O Realty Income. So, whoops, let's see here. There we go. There we go. It's working. Vic says, I'm long China. Oh, there we go. I think China still has a few problems going on over there, but they will recover. China does have that history. Let's see. Vic says, don't count them out. And Chad says he doesn't. So yeah, there we go. I'm still pretty good with China. I do like China. Vic says, China will dominate EV unless terrified too much. And let's see here. Yeah, here's another thing. Mexico too is also doing really well. So I'm still more bullish for India, but it doesn't hurt to hedge your bets and grab both India and Mexico if you're looking for that international exposure. Terry says, hi group, I would love info on the India Nifty 50. ETF that can be bought on Wealth Simple. Thanks, and keep up the great show. I've never looked at that particular ETF, but I am going to be dropping today for the channel members a chance to vote for the channel member choice video, which is the last video of the month. The channel members get to choose it. I would really love it if you guys would. One of the options is the international exposure one, and we'll look at some of these ETFs like that if that one gets voted through. I would love to see that happen. Bleak is in the house with a hey, hey. Vic says, I buy HXX for Europe's ETF. All right. And we got Paul in the house with a super here, a $2 super. So that's going into the pot for the 0 to 100K TFSA challenge. So all supers go into that pot. And there we go. Let's see. Crypto turning directions today, heading up. Yeah, we're going to take a look at that in a little bit. Once we get through the news, I want to take a quick look at the crypto chart, at the Bitcoin chart, and we'll sort of see what's happening there. But you guys are just keeping this all going. Milk duds. All right. Tesla long-term play, it will recover. I think Tesla will recover long-term. The thing about Tesla is every time everybody thinks they're down and out, they find a way to get back. I don't think this will be any difference. And so, okay, we got XID and ZID for India. 50 people here and only 31 likes. Hit thumbs up, people. Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't hit the thumbs up yet, just do it. Just slam on it. Let's just pound it. Let's, we'll keep everything going. Paul says, growing up in the 70s and 80s, now you see these music groups playing their music on YouTube, but back then you had no clue what they looked like. Yeah, well, I mean, until your MTV came along, then everybody knew what everybody looked like. Paralovia, real estate agents being replaced by the internet should lower prices in the housing market. Yeah, I mean, anytime you can eliminate middle people from any kind of financial transaction, it is going to benefit the buyer 100%. Vic says, I swear with WTS, I have more than 500 stocks. Wow. That's a lot of stocks, Vic. Hard to keep track of, too. Let's see. Anyone remember travel agents and printed airline tickets? I remember them existing. I do remember that they existed. Pension Booster YouTube channel is good for those that want information on how to qualify for GIS, any type of pension or RRSP. Will be too much income to qualify for GIS. So there we go. So the Pension Booster YouTube channel. Paul, you should throw a link up over on the Discord for that. So if anybody does want to check that out, just head over to the Discord. Vic says, yep, I have ABNB, BKNG, Expedia, and Trip. There we go. Oh, that's Airbnb. Never mind. That's hilarious. I'm so used to just reading stock symbols that, you can sneak in something like an Airbnb and it'll be like, yeah, it'll get me. Lisa says, you did a deep dive on the REIT SIA about a year ago. Would you mind revisiting that with an update? Yeah, it's one of those ones. I do have it in the pool, so it's going to be coming up for a vote here pretty soon. But yeah, I would love to revisit SIA for sure. G-Mark says, do you use covered calls in your portfolio? A little bit, not a lot. My portfolio tends to be much more total return. So, for example, one of my portfolios, not the 0 to 100 one, I actually do have a good exposure to ENCC, and that has been wonderful. It's growing. It's brought a lot of income into it. So, yeah, absolutely. Let me see here. Seabass says, BNKL 6 Canadian banks with 25% leverage. Are you bullish on banks? I think banks are going to start to look up. I think they're going to be a longer recovery than most. But here's the thing: when you are looking at a for BNKL, for example, when you're looking at something like that, that slow buildup is actually not bad for writing contracts on, especially when you start to bring leverage in. So when you see all of these new ones popping up, folks, with the L at the end, so like BNKL or ENCL, those mean that they have leverage on it. So, the thing with leverage is if it's doing well, you can make a lot of money on it. But if it does bad, you can also lose a lot. So you always want to be a little bit more careful with them. But there are times when it makes sense to grab one for sure. Gmark says 100%. Okay, that's all the alt rock stuff. Matthew, good. Let's see. Gmarks remembers MapQuest before Google Maps was the best thing ever. Do you remember actual real maps? When I used to work testing water samples, I would come out to the solid waste site where I had to collect all of the water. And I remember the first time I had to do it, they just handed me a map. And they said, all right, all these X's are where it is. So quite literally, I was given a map. Now, luckily, I'm familiar with maps. So in some cases, I'd be like, and trying to find this little tiny well in the middle of the woods. I would be looking at the little lines. They'll show the topographic lines to see how steep things were to help me find stuff. So that was fun. That was definitely fun for sure. 9, if you drip under 100K in Wealthsimple, do they remove your premium status if you got premium by having 100K in assets? Or if you dip under. I don't think they'll do it right away. They probably will do it. There's probably like a point where they check your account and, but I've never had that happen. So if anybody in Wealthsimple has dipped under 100K, let 9 know. But I have a feeling it'll be one of these situations where they probably check every so often. And so you may have a bit of a buffer plan or buffer period. So I assume it looks like this, like sort of like if you know how the Pro works. So with the Pro, they bill you once a month. So this is, and keep in mind, I cannot verify what I'm saying. This is my guess. This is my best guess. My best guess is that they would still have like a Pro-like date for you once you are in that thing, even though it's a Pro at $0. And once a month, they probably look to make sure you're still there. That's what I would think probably happens because they could build that in like software-wise into the Pro account really easily. So I imagine that's how it would, but you never know. They might actually be more stringent than that, but that would be my best guess. Vic remembers dial-up. And let's see, the Warchman from Winnipeg. How long have you been in the finance space for? There's days where it feels like I've been in it my whole life, but probably most seriously, I'd say the last probably 5 years. Most of my background is in management and science, of all things. Terry says, regarding Tesla, is Tesla simply automobiles or is Tesla robotic arm and Tesla housing simply window dressing? Well, that's the thing. Like, I think the robots that they've been working on are technically Tesla. So it would be very interesting to see. So if these robots come out and do really well, I mean, that's a type of thing. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts within the Tesla company that could potentially help with the prices. So it's not entirely cars. But I think right now we'll have to sort of see. Right now, I kind of think Tesla's going to be down for a little bit. So if anything, this is what I think of Tesla. I think of Tesla as being a stock right now that's in a position that it probably doesn't hurt to have like a small DCA going, sort of like a leave it and forget it. And then, a couple of years down the road when Tesla's doing really well again, you can sort of open up that account and say, oh, look at all this money that I made. That's kind of the way I sort of see Tesla at this moment. Now, Terry is currently not holding Tesla. Vic says, I love stocks. I just buy a share here and they're including dividends to buy without drip. This is fractional buys is nuts. I mean, yeah, well, for CSU, you kind of have to do it fractional, but I kind of understand. I'm one of these people that I like to see whole numbers. I don't know why. I just really like to see a whole number. Like I want to own 3 stocks opposed to 2.87622143. Hey, Starbucks. I'm still at it. Still waiting for your sponsorship. Daniel says, hi, why is TD doing so bad against other banks like Royal? Well, TD had a few issues. They did have some issues going on down in the States that certainly didn't help. But It really boils down to, it's kind of weird with the banks. Like, I think each of the banks, depending on how well they've positioned themselves for what's, and it's already sort of started a little bit of these mortgages coming in. So I think it really boils down to a lot of different things. Now, I haven't looked directly at TD in a bit, so I don't know if there's anything going on in their fundamentals right now that might be causing some issues. But I think the banking sector overall, depending on how they position themselves for the wave of mortgage renewals, that's going to really determine how they're doing. Now, some banks that have been doing really well. Scotia Bank has been doing well. National Bank has been doing well. But I imagine as we start getting into some of the rate cuts and as we get through the mortgage crisis, these guys are all going to recover on the other side. So you can look at, like, if you're a long-term investor, what's happening with TD right now, it's a temporary thing. So they're not a bad investment when it comes to the long term. All right. Vic Vin says, are the leverage ETFs allowed in TFSA for tax purposes? I recall reading using leverage isn't allowed, but I'm assuming that refers to brokerage leverage to pay options. Yeah, exactly. So if you're using an ETF that uses leverage, that's fine. You can have that in your TFSA, and yeah, you can. Like, if it does well with that leverage, you can really grow your space in your TFSA. But keep in mind, if it does horrible, if you pick the wrong one and it shrinks, that's shrinking your space too. So it goes both directions. HEQL, HEQT with leverage. There you go. And Abalash says, well, simple, looks at net deposits, 10,000, not current account value. All right. Rochester says, Vicvin, you can buy ETFs like HSU, which is the 2 S&P 500 leverage. And Gmark says, Starbucks stock a buy. Well, let's ask this. So Starbucks coffee has given us a super sticker for $4. Thank you, Starbucks coffee. That is, of course, going into the 0 to 100 TFSA. Now, I don't believe this is the real Starbucks, but I really, really appreciate it. If somebody actually took the time to make an account and call it Starbucks coffee to come in and do this, you made my day. This is fantastic. I love this. I'm probably getting a little red because I'm like, yes, this is beautiful. But anyway, Gmarks, you did ask. Well, let's go back here for a second. I was distracted by the Starbucks. Starbucks stock a buy. I think Starbucks is a very solid company. I don't think they're going anywhere. Now, a lot of times in Canada, we see the Tim Hortons everywhere. But depending, if you go to Vancouver, it's almost the same way with Starbucks. It's actually funny. In Vancouver, when I lived there, I ran into Starbucks more often than I ran into Tim Hortons. So Starbucks was fantastic. Starbucks, of course, has a huge presence in the U.S. Now, there have been rumors of like McDonald's trying to move into more specialty coffees and things like that. But I think Starbucks has a very strong footing. I think they're going to be solid. I would consider them to be blue chip. So yeah, I think they're a safe long-term investment. TD Bank for life, great stock. Rochester says, I have 1,050 shares of BSN at 42. So there we go. That's not bad. That is not bad at all. Yeah, you meant BNS. I was looking at BSN for a second, and I saw below the BNS, and I was like, oh yeah, not bad, not bad. And yeah, and I mean, right now, I mean, Scotiabank has been doing good. They've been creeping up a little bit. I think they've done well with preparing for the mortgage issues. So Tara, he says, seriously now, while I'm not holding Tesla, I am holding lots of Hubba Bubba. So perhaps you all took a dental property REITs. Nice. I love hearing Hubba Bubba. Perlovia says, have you still got BCE? I sold at a loss and replaced with Telus. I actually added BCE to the 0 to 100 challenge. So you'll see that coming up in the next episode. It has dropped because I bought it, I think, closer to 49, but I'm okay with that. It's going to turn around. It's also going to come back up. So I'm perfectly happy with that. If anything, probably the following month, I might add a couple more shares just to just to knock that price down a little bit, to knock my adjusted cost base down a little bit. Paul says, who remembers the Altamira mutual funds from the 1990s, now owned by National Bank? I don't remember them, but all right, we're almost caught up. Good, because then we can get to the second news story. Fractional shares have no choice on price per share. Tim Hortons is bunk. I'd take Starbucks over Tim's any day. There we go. Long Hubba Bubba, let's go. And Ian says, I was looking into moving money to Wealthsimple for the 0.5 match. Got an email saying it was all set and registered for the match. Moved the money, then found out I was too late. Oh my God, I would talk to them. That to me, that sounds almost like kind of like dirty pool. So yeah, disappointed. Wealthsimple. Make sure Ian is treated right. Okay. All right, let's move. Let's move to our next news story here. All right, just give me a second here. Get Ian off. So this is my version of Jay Powell, as though the rate hikes are now a game show. But yeah, so they had their meeting in the U.S. Basically, there was no surprises here. As we expected, the Fed held their overnight rate. So it's still 5.25 to 5.50%. Now, they did hint that they intend to make multiple rate cuts before the end of the year, which is great. So the market certainly liked that. So the market did stay green during this meeting, which is a new thing for whenever Jay Powell speaks. Sometimes the market doesn't like what he says. Now, he did address those recent CPIs. So the last couple of CPIs in the States have actually shown inflation to look a little bit sticky. And he says that they're not really looking at those as being very indicative of the overall status, but that he thinks they may actually be seasonal. So they're expecting things to get back on track with their next CPI. So we'll have to see how that goes. Now, if that next CPI were to come in sticky as well, then we could have some interesting stuff going on. So let's hope that we can keep that going the way it is right now. So let's see here. All right, Abalash. Wealthsimple specifically states premium is available to clients who have net deposits of at least or total assets meeting the required threshold. There we go. My opinion is no rate cuts this year. Ooh, very interesting. Well, if it continues to be sticky in the States, because a lot of people are pushing, looking at July as being the first possibility. I still think we're going to get some, but it would be very interesting if the CPI doesn't come down. If inflation stays sticky, then rates, you never know what could happen. Let's see. Starbucks is overpriced. Tim's any day, every day. What years did you live in BC? What city? So in BC, I've only lived in two cities in BC, Vancouver and Kelowna. So for Vancouver, I was living there around the time of the Winter Olympics. So living downtown there, it was very, very expensive. I was in Kelowna right around 1999 is when I was in Kelowna. So, but yeah, definitely loved BC. All right, let's get to our next story. Let's get some of these pounded out of the way here. So retail sales. So retail sales data that also came out this week for January. So retail sales overall fell 0.3% in January, and this was mostly powered by the sales of new cars. They basically were down 3%. Part dealers were also down about 2.4%. Now, interestingly enough, used car sales actually went up by 4.5%. And that makes sense because if you're not buying new cars, you're probably going to go buy a used car. So core retail sales, which exclude gas stations and fuel vendors, as well as the motor vehicle and the parts dealers, those actually rose 0.4% in the first month of 2024. So it's the cars right now that's sort of holding that down, which is kind of interesting. All right, we'll jump very quickly to our next story, and then we'll get back to chat. Provincial debt. So we are starting to see some of the provincial debt numbers come out. So far, Canadian provinces, basically, they are set to issue more debt than they did last year. And basically, they're looking at trying to plug a lot of their budgeting shortfalls. And a lot of that, of course, is healthcare. Healthcare being a huge burden right now. I don't want to call healthcare a burden, but the costs being a burden on the budget. So right now, provincial borrowing needs are up about 21.5% compared to the previous fiscal year. They are estimating roughly 130 billion for this new fiscal year. Now, the province with the worst is it's actually Quebec. So the Quebec budget shortfall for this new coming fiscal year. So fiscal year starts April, goes from April to April. So this is what they anticipate they need. They're looking at a budget shortfall of 11 billion, and they're planning to take on roughly 36.5 billion in new debt. BC is also projecting a deficit of 7.9 billion, so they're up towards the top. Now, there were two surpluses so far from the data that's come in. Alberta, of course, no brainer there. They've got $367 million in surplus. And this is their fourth straight year of surpluses, but that's no surprise. This one did surprise me. New Brunswick, they have a $41 million surplus, and this is their seventh straight year of surpluses. So that to me is just really, really, really interesting. All right. Gmarks is saying, did anyone buy the Reddit IPO? Chad is saying no. I've got something. I've got a story on Reddit coming up, so I'll reserve my comments until I get to the story. Terry says, I find it difficult to understand what Hammond Manufacturing actually does. I understand they do component housings, sometimes radiation sensitive, but while I like their lineage, growth confuses me. Okay, well, yeah, Hammond Manufacturing mostly does all of the housing. So when you build a transformer, it doesn't just sit out there. It needs to be houses. There needs to be infrastructure around it that holds it all in. So when you look at Hammond Power Solutions, they're making all of those transformers. And then Hammond Manufacturing is creating all the housing and the things that hold it in place. So you kind of need both. And that's where, and this is kind of what's nice, is that right now, Hammond Power Solutions, they have done incredibly, incredibly well developing basically their clientele. And one area which has been hugely interesting is that they have a very good foothold in India. So they do North America and India. So that was really smart of them to choose India, because where India's economy is really exploding, what the Indian government has been doing is they have been building up infrastructure in the country to basically make it easier for people to come in and set up shop. So because of all of this infrastructure push, Hammond has been making a bit of a killing. Like they have a waiting list of people waiting for their services. So that's Power Solutions. Well, Power Solutions still needs all of the infrastructure that Hammond Manufacturing makes. So once Power Solutions gets their foot in the door and they're like, okay, we can provide this. Hey, have you looked at our sister company, Hammond Manufacturing? Let's bring them in and get that, get it all done in one big swoop. So it's two companies, but a lot of times a business, or in this case, India, they may be hiring, they may only be technically hiring one, but they're basically hiring both at the same time. So that's kind of one of the nice things, that they're basically, Hammond Manufacturing is providing the services that, because initially, before you had Hammond Manufacturing, Hammond Power Solutions would be basically outsourcing a lot of the infrastructure stuff around their transformers to other companies. Now they just sort of like, it's kind of like, oh, let's splinter off the company, make another company that specializes in all of that. Then we can get everything exactly as we want. And that, of course, helps both companies. So that's kind of where they're at anyway. Good old Hammond. Terry says, darn right and tight. Premier Higgs is the boss. There we go. So Premier Higgs of New Brunswick. Nice. Yeah, he's been doing fantastic. All right, let's get our next story out of the way. All right, so Apple, Apple's back. Apple's in the news a lot this week. Like they're getting sued as well, but we're not going to talk about them being sued. But right now they're basically getting a whole bunch of flack with their lack of generative AI. So Siri in particular has become a little bit of a joke compared to things like, well, ChatGPT and other AI chatbots. So Apple is trying to figure out how we're going to fix this. So they're in talks with Google to add, well, Gemini AI to their iPhone line. They've also had conversations with OpenAI, but right now it looks like Gemini AI is the front runner. So what they're trying to do is they want to get a partnership to add AI to the iPhone. And this, of course, the significance of this is if they're successful and they're able to get, something like Gemini AI on the iPhone, there's a lot of people who don't really understand AI or don't have access to it and don't know how to get access to it. But all of a sudden, if it becomes sort of a default part of their iPhone, it'll make it, well, it'll help. Yeah, it's just going to really, really help with AI adoption overall, which is fantastic. Now, currently, Google does have a deal with Apple right now. Basically, the part of this deal makes Google part of the current deal makes Google their default search engine on Safari, and this here is actually currently under investigation by the U.S. competition regulators. There we go. So they kind of get into this whole thing with Google. Now, there's other thing that's been going on, some of the lawsuit thing. I said I wasn't going to get into it, but I'll just briefly mention. It's basically Apple is being looked at as holding this environment where they make it harder for non-Apple products to work with Apple. So that's kind of what that's all about. So like, for example, if you have if you want your iPhone to work with a watch that you bought that's non-Apple, it sometimes it's hard and you got to do a whole bunch of stuff to get it working. Whereas if you have the Apple Watch, they just seamlessly work perfectly. So that's kind of what everything's going on. It's sort of like saying that Apple is rigging the game against other companies that want to use their products, and where they have such a huge market share, that then becomes an issue. So I don't know if that's a big problem going on. But keep in mind, I'm biased because I have all of these Apple things. So when I look at Apple technology, and this is kind of my opinion, is that when you buy Apple, a lot of times you're paying more, but you're kind of paying a little bit of a premium to have everything work together so well. Like for example, my phone, I don't have to even look at my phone because my watch will unlock my phone and everything communicates back and forth. I don't have to worry about moving stuff from one device to another because everything is available on every device. So, and I pay more for the Apple products for that reason. And that's just kind of the way I look at it. But I can understand people who perhaps don't want Apple products. But I mean, if you don't want an Apple product, if you want, other stuff, there's always other options. Like, there is Android for things like that. But anyway, that's just me. We'll just leave that alone at that. Terry says regarding Hammond, we Canada has shaky relationships with both China and India. Canada may have some shaky relationships with China and India, but right now that doesn't appear to be impacting what Hammond is doing. And there's the reality is there's a huge demand for the products that Hammond has. And that demand's not going to go down. It's actually going to go up. And, whether Canada has a shaky relationship with India, I don't think India cares. Right now, they just need those transformers set up. They just need that infrastructure put in place. So it's not really a big issue. All right. Paul says, and I'm going to have another sip of my Starbucks mug here. And for those of you who missed that, we had a Starbucks pop up in the chat earlier. Oh, very good. All right. I'll tell you right now, hands down, Starbucks makes some of the best mugs, the best coffee mugs on the planet. So I've definitely given them that. Ian says, I've been going back and forth with Wealth Simple about the bait and switch. They said it would not be fair to the other people if they gave me the match. Any other trading platforms I could try? Well, there's a couple of things. Like, it's actually interesting. I got approached by Webull to promote their new Canadian platform. I looked at it And I decided not to. Basically, they were going to give me an affiliate link, and, I could make, everybody who signed up, I was going to make a little bit of money on it. But I looked at their platform, and even though they're giving you some free commission-free trading, it's only temporary as an introductory offer. And then the prices I thought were just a little bit too high. I thought there were better options out there. So I don't want to push people towards Webull. I looked at it, and I'm like, I'm not impressed yet. So I turned them down. I turned them down, which is fine. As I said, with you guys, I have a certain level of integrity. So, I'm definitely not pushing it that way. But if you're looking for, if you're looking for a really good place to do your trading, there's nothing wrong with National Bank. I do love National Bank, and it is commission free. So that might be something to put in. Now, they're not going to give you like a whole bunch of a welcoming in program or gift or anything. But they're reliable, and you have no commission. So that's something to sort of think about. And maybe go back to Wealthsimple and say, look, if you're not keeping up the end of this bargain, I'm going to move. Like, find, for example, a National Bank or someplace first. So that way there, if, they decide to not take your threat, you can then follow through with it. They're fighting so hard to get people to come over. It doesn't hurt to sort of say, I'm leaving unless you keep this. Keep your word. Paul says, Ian, when you switch to Wealthsimple and receive a reward, you have to stay 365 days. Otherwise, they add the reward to your transfer fees. Well, there you go. There's the rub. Maybe they got you there if they took care of some of your transfer fees, but I'm not sure. If you said they were taking care of those transfer fees or not. But yeah, if they have you, they may have you that way. You may be stuck there for a year, even though you may not be. It depends on what the reward, fully is. I still think it's low ball. I think it's, it's dirty pool to not follow through. It's bad customer service as well. Abelash says, Apple now in the ring with the big guys, EU and US Department of Justice. Going to be fun. Yeah. There we go. I'm not sure if you did get a reward. Ian says, I like Wealthsimple. I want to send a message by leaving and getting a bonus for coming back. And Ian says, Paul, I got my feed covered and nothing else. Was a fairly big RRSP account from investment. Ian, I'm not even their regular rewards. And here we go. We got Starbucks coffee again. Another $4. Holy banana bread. You guys rock. So yeah, everybody go buy your Starbucks mugs. I'm going to take another sip here because it is good coffee. Oh, very, very cool. So there we go. So that's like $8 in total from Starbucks. This is awesome. I may not even need a Starbucks sponsor. Maybe what I just need to do is continually drink in my Starbucks mug and keep calling them out. If every time I call them out, they send me a $4 sticker, I'm probably going to need to wear Depends on the show because I'll need to pee for sure. All right. Terry says, thanks for your response regarding Hammond. And yeah, he got nothing. That does suck. Absolutely. All right. Ian says, yeah, I'm a bit mad at them right now. Paralovia says, how does Wealthsimple get paid with having commission-free trading? Very easy. Very easy. So what happens is they're holding a lot of the stocks that you're buying already. So when the markets are low, Wealthsimple is buying like crazy. So let's say, for example, we were talking about BNS and somebody mentioned they got it at $42. Well, Wealthsimple probably bought a whole bunch at $42. And so as that price goes up right now, let's say, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, like 66, we'll say. So right now you go in and you buy one at 66, they're giving you the one they bought at 42. So if you think about it, each stock that you're buying right now, they're making a bit of a, they're making some money on it. But that's what they do. They're buying every time the market goes low, you got Wealthsimple in there buying. So you've got that spread. But keep in mind, it's not just Wealthsimple. All the brokers do it. That's the reason that you can get your stocks right away because they have a supply of them, of those stocks. They buy a whole bunch, and that's fantastic. And they replace, of course, what you're buying, but they keep a certain level of them. It's not so much like it used to be in the old days. Like back in the olden days, like really, really far back, brokers wouldn't do this, and it would sometimes take like 3 days, and it'd just be crazy. It'd be kind of crazy back then. Anyway, Terry goes, let's see. I have a coworker that arrives at work with a gigantic Bucks cup with a sticker on it denoting which product it is. Personally, I use the sample pod machine at work. Well, come on. You know, you want to use your Starbucks coffee. Use your cup. Actually, my favorite. mm, Actually, my favorite with Starbucks was they used to have these Christmas mugs, and I would use that Christmas mug all year round because it was just the best mug ever. So I do miss that Christmas mug. Eventually, they stopped making the Christmas mug, and it was funny because it looked exactly like their Christmas cup. But eventually, my Christmas mug broke, and it took a lot because these mugs are tough. So it's just one of those things. All right. Ian says fee covers, not feed covered. All right, and we got another. Whoops, let's pull this up there. We get another super sticker coming in here from Starbucks, $4 super sticker. Holy banana bread. You guys are awesome. Akidaz says, I wish Wealthsimple would let us buy preferred shares on Split Core. Really, I didn't realize that they weren't letting you buy that. But that's the thing. I do most of my stuff in National Bank. So National Bank pretty much lets me buy anything. That I've never run into anything that they haven't. Here we go. We got Starbucks again. Another $4. Holy banana bread. That is $16 in super stickers from Starbucks. So there we go. Oh man. Paul says, when is the Hammond super chat coming? I don't know. Hammond. We'll have to start calling out Hammond. Come on. Terry says, I love the Starbucks talk. Yeah, absolutely. Gonna have another Starbucks coffee here. Well, this is good. Now I'm getting low on my coffee, to be honest. It's just going a little bit crazy. All right, let's get to our next news story here. Holy banana bread. We did the last news story without me changing it to the Apple Google. So anyway, there's our little AI with an apple. But the next news story, and this is the one I've been waiting for, is the Reddit story. So Reddit, holy banana bread. So they had their IPO release on Thursday. Now, people were asking about the IPO. When I always say this, I tend to hold back on an IPO, and usually because a lot of times the price will go up and then it will come back down, and usually it will settle a little bit lower than where it opened. So that's kind of what I was thinking about with Reddit, but it surprised me a little bit. So they actually, they had a pretty good IPO. So they opened for the first time, and this was on a Thursday. So they started with a valuation of $6.4 billion US, and they had an initial pricing of $34, though when they opened, they did open higher. They opened at $47. They then went on to soar up to 48. Basically, they soared up 48% to $57.78. And that was just in the first hour. And of course, there was an immediate sell-off, because when that happens, there's going to be people who are like, I'm taking that profit and running. And that's absolutely normal. So it then fell back down. It didn't actually go below their initial offering. So I know on Friday when I was writing the news, they had an opening price at $48.26. So they're doing okay. They're doing okay. So this is the type of thing where after the initial hype, that's when you want to sort of look and see where they're going to settle, maybe get into a DCA if this is a company that you're looking at. So I did not buy in personally because I always wait on an IPO. Sometimes we do get something like this where it, where it does do really, really, really well. But we have to sort of see how that's gonna go here. All right, let's take a look here. And we'll start with Starbucks. Starbucks, another super sticker of $4. So that's $20 from Starbucks coffee. Holy banana bread. I might just have to sort of pack that $20. Well, it's actually going into the 0 to 100K TFSA challenge. But what I was going to say is, I'm going to have myself a latte soon at Starbucks. That's just fantastic. Paul says, I have a feeling every time you show the Starbucks mug, they send you a super chat. It's funny. That's been the way it has been. Every time I brought the mug up, hello, Starbucks, they've sent a super chat. So it's like, yeah, it's crazy. I've never seen anything like this myself. But, hey, I got to love this coffee. Oh, God, that is so good. Anyway, let's get back to the news. All right, just give me 1 second here. So now we're at the crypto corner part. So I'm just going to remove this for now. Let's just remove this. We're going to go big screen. Boop-a-doop-doop-doo. There we go. And I'm going to bring this back up here. And just give me a second here. I want to actually, there we go. Let's see. Or yeah, this layout here. This layout works. So let's pull it back up. All right, now. All right, let's go back over here to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has had an interesting little bit of a week. So when we look back here, so this here is Friday. So Friday we had a pretty red day for Bitcoin. It fell quite a bit, but now we've actually had a half decent weekend. So we've actually been getting a little bit of recovery on Bitcoin. Now, here's the funny thing with Bitcoin, and let me pull the comments back up here so I can see them. All right. So here is the funny thing with Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, what we've had happening is that at 66,247, which is where they're sitting at right now, while they just went down a tiny bit, we're still sitting close to the old all-time high. We're sitting at prices where if a month ago somebody had told you, oh, Bitcoin's going to be up around 66K, you'd be like, nah, seriously? You'd be, it'd be awesome. It'd be kind of fun. But, the reality is we're now at that point that because we've hit this, because we broke into the 70s, people are looking at it and saying, oh, we're down. There's still a lot of track left for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to go back up. Now, when we look overall, I'll pull up here the cryptocurrency heat map because this just shows you what's going on in crypto today. And Paul earlier had mentioned, everything was moving up. And look at it. It is. Bitcoin's up 3.48%. Look at Solana. I gotta love Solana. It's up 4.93%. And Dogecoin, 9.69%. Now, it's interesting. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. I think it's Mark something. Basically the CEO or the guy who owns Dogecoin or manages or whatever. He was saying this funny thing about it. What was he saying? He was saying that I think he tweeted out that he hoped Bitcoin would go up to 1 million a coin while he was asleep, type thing. And I was reading that and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, no, it's doing fantastic. So you gotta love that. All right, let's get back here and we'll get to you guys' questions. Here we go. There we go. I accidentally removed me instead of the background. Holy banana bread. And yeah, look at this. Starbucks again. Another $4. That's like $24. Holy cow. So that is absolutely funny. And Mary is saying, "Oh my God, you're a drinking game." I am. Here we go. Starbucks. Go get some Starbucks just for this, just in honor of this stream and what's happened here. Go buy some Starbucks, folks. Enjoy some Starbucks tonight. Oh God, yeah. So that's absolutely. Terry says, "I wish Starbucks had an espresso pod machine for my house." There we go. Paul says, I have a Starbucks cup for cold drinks with the lid so that when I drop it, all the liquid doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. Now the one I have here does have a lid. It's not here right now. It's downstairs, but it does. And here we go. Here we go. Starbucks in again with another $4 super sticker. Holy banana bread. This is absolutely crazy. Um, Paul says, "Oh no, I broke the Starbucks super chat by mentioning it." There we go. Maybe. Hey, Starbucks is breaking open this chat. It's absolutely crazy. I've never seen anything like it before, but hey, this is a funny thing. Maybe this is Starbucks, and maybe this is just their way of marketing. I don't know. I mean, my first guess is that it was just one of you guys saying, "Ha, ha, ha, let's have some fun." Um, it's funny. As far as trolls go, this is an awesome troll. But no, it could be. It could just be what it is. So we have to sort of see. Um, Carrie says the Starbucks egger sandwich is super delicious. Oh my god, yeah. And I'm a huge fan of all the pumpkin stuff. So pumpkin spice latte and the pumpkin scone, they're all just absolutely fantastic. Vic Vin says, "Oh, that's so funny. Starbucks heard the buzz. No more free advertising. You deserve it. Candace, you're the best." Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes, this is, if I had known this was going to happen, I probably would have changed the name of the stream and called it the Starbucks edition. So we certainly have to, look at it that way. Okay, let's look at what's coming up. Jill says, "No, it's a bot for ads." Did you look this up? Like, what is that? Well, that's funny. That's funny. If it is a bot for ads, then hey, I'm grateful that it found me today. Kevin Cass says, "Love the egg sandwich." Yeah, gotta love the Starbucks products. They have some really, really good stuff, including they have this fantastic Starbucks mug, and their coffee is just fantastic. So, love me some Starbucks. There we go. It's going pretty good. So what has been going on? What's going on this week? We have on Tuesday, we have a video coming out. It's the 8 pillars of financial success. So this is absolutely awesome. So that is coming out on Tuesday. So it's one of the FIQ videos. I think there's going to be some stuff in there that everybody can sort of love, because even if you're an experienced investor, there's probably stuff that, some of the basics that sometimes you forget about. So that's coming out. And then we're still, what the heck do I have coming out after that? On Thursday, give me a second. I'm going to pull it up here. But I think Thursday is our members' choice. Yeah, I believe it is. So there's going to be voting on that. I'm putting up the vote tonight. So they will be voting on the members' choice on Thursday. So that's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Now, as I mentioned before, we do have a few other things coming up as well. So we do have on April 10th, we're going to have that one night crypto show. That's going to be fun. We also have, we have the next members only chat coming up on, I don't know what date it is. I think it's the following week after that. So that's going to be really, really, really cool. All right. And we got another Starbucks $4 super sticker. Terry says, "My full-time day job is as a professional troll, like Billy Goat's Bluff." Nice. Yeah, it's a living. All right. Kevin and Kaz comes in with the $5.49 super sticker. Holy banana bread. Thank you so much, Kevin. That is absolutely appreciated. John Locke says, "How do you do super chats on your phone?" That's a good question. I do not know. I know that normally you have a little dollar sign thing underneath where you got post a comment. So I would assume that you're going to see that on your phone, but I'm not really sure. I've never actually done a super chat on the phone. Like, I do most of my stuff on a desktop. You know, call me old-fashioned, but and no, it's just because that's where my work environment is. So, and cameras and everything else. And oh, if you look up in the background there, you'll see the new mic on the boom up there. So that's always kind of cool. Oh, Jill says it's the dollar sign. So all right, and I hear her yelling in the background. So yeah, there's a dollar sign. You click on the dollar sign, and that does it. So we're almost at the end of the stream. Get in your last minute whatevers, as I have another drink of Starbucks from this wonderful Starbucks mug. This is just awesome. Life can't get any better than a great cup of Starbucks. Mm. Oh, that was good. That was very, very good. And I will sadly admit that was the last drop. So that was the last drop. So no more Starbucks left, but it was fantastic. Um, all right, the dollar sign. All right, and we got a super chat. I was going to say super chat. We have a channel membership for Safi, member for 7 months. Fantastic. Always love the channel members. You guys absolutely rock. And not to be overshadowed, but we got Starbucks one more time in there with another $4. Holy banana bread. If you are a Starbucks bot, I will tell you I love AI. I really, really do. And Jill's like, dear God, enough with certain coffee brands. Yeah, that's funny. Vic Vin says, are you loading up on the Bitcoin miners for the post-halving parabolic run? Bitfarms, CleanSpark are my faves. I'm not personally. I'm more or less just going to play right now. Most of my Bitcoin moves are simply from the fact that I'm playing Bitcoin ETFs. I've been swinging them like crazy. So to me, that's been good enough. So it's hard to say. I think with Bitcoin miners, it's going to be really, really interesting. Some of them I think are going to do really well. Like, I guess for me, one of my favorites is Hut. I've always been a big fan of Hut. So we'll have to sort of see, because it's going to be really interesting too. There's going to be some miners who might be like, I'm only getting half the reward. Perhaps it's not worth it. But I mean, I think it still will be worth it, because once you do get an infusion to the price of Bitcoin, that's going to be really, really interesting. All right. And Terry says, does Starbucks trade on the stock exchange? I'm pretty sure they do. I thought it was like S-Bucks or something like that. Let me find out. Give me a second here. I will tell you exactly what their symbol is. Yeah, S-Bucks. SBUX. So SBUX on the New York Stock Exchange. Right now, their share price is going for $90.71. So definitely worth checking out. Oh yeah, here we go. I'm looking it up while Wayne is just telling you guys. So there we go. Jill says, I imagine there's probably a CDR. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. Go Starbucks. There we go. And there we go. There's John Locke coming in with a $6.99 super chat. John, you absolutely rock. I love you guys. You guys are all so friggin' awesome. This has been like an insanely good stream. Terry says, thanks. Paul's saying S-Bucks as well, and Terry saying S-Bucks as well. There was something else I wanted to quickly just sort of hit on. Here we go. So we do have a few things coming up this week for the Canada and the US. So Canada on Wednesday, we do have a basically our month-over-month GDP. That's coming out. So we can take a look at that and see what that's going to look like. Keep in mind, it's not till April 10th when we get our Bank of Canada interest rate decision, the next one. The US, now this one is big. Personal consumer expenditures. That's coming out on Friday. So that will give us another look at what's going on with their inflation. So hopefully these look good. All right. I do see something here. I just take I have to pull over here to see who won. Paul gifted a membership, and Wayne Smith won. Wayne has won. So there's a big old thanks. Oh, can I put this up? There we go. I can put that up. And there we go. Thank you, Paul. That is awesome. This is absolutely, absolutely awesome. This has been a great show. No hands down about it. Coming up, earnings wise, and this is another thing I wanted to sort of point on. We got three big ones. So one of them is due. So DOO, that's Skidoo. Skidoo's been doing good lately, so they're definitely worth checking out. Also, HPS.A. I mentioned it in the deep dive that that it was coming out. And this is it. So I'm really going to be interested to take a look at HPS.A because a lot of the data in my last deep dive on them was before they had that big price explosion in the last quarter. So this is going to be really interesting to see what this HPS.A looks like. And here's the other thing. Hut. I mentioned Hut. Hut has their earnings coming out this week as well. And I think that's going to be I think they're going to do well. I think Hut will be one of those ones that will do okay. It's funny. I used to swing trade Hut, but then they did a reverse split. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, man, they've gotten a little bit too expensive for what I want to do with it. So, that is one of the fun things. Wayne says, I owe you 1 Bitcoin. Oh, well, thank you, Wayne. That would be the super chat to end all chats, wouldn't it? Terry says, Candace, your show would be an asset to Starbucks. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, I like I said, I love Starbucks. They're doing good. I don't have any coffee left, but I have the mug. Starbucks in the camera. Woo, 3D Starbucks. Woo, woo. Anyway, don't mind me. I'm just being silly now. It's probably because that super sticker. Ever since I've seen that super sticker that a few of you have sent me with the moving coffee cup, I just totally get into that. Paul says, my feeling on Bitcoin miners is after the halving, their income is cut in half, but their CapEx costs will go up buying new hardware. That's a possibility, and that's kind of the interesting thing. So we're going to have to see how it goes. But once we do have, like if we have a huge, massive pump within the price of Bitcoin, that's going to probably make it a little bit more worth it for them. Chad says BTC is because of all of the selling of GBTC. Yeah, absolutely. Now, GBTC is, I think I heard something along the lines of, was it 92 days and they should have no more left? But so, yeah, GBTC is basically been getting rid of. There's been a lot of outflow on that. So we'll have to see once that is finished. All right. Whew. We had another great show. Good 2 hours worth of live streams and holy banana bread. You guys all came together on them. Super stickers and super chats and gifting memberships and signing up for memberships. This was absolutely fantastic. So once again, everybody, I'm going to bid everybody a good farewell for today. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll be back here on Wednesday with a market close. See you guys then. And until then, we got a lot of videos. Take care, everybody. This has been a great show. Bye, everybody.